That familiar feeling of fatigue after a meal. The quiet anxiety that comes with every blood sugar reading. One may follow all the rules, diligently avoiding sweets and starches, only to feel betrayed by the numbers on a screen. But what if the prevailing wisdom has been focusing on the wrong culprit? What if the key to metabolic control isn't found on the dinner plate, but is instead locked away inside the body's largest and most forgotten energy reservoir? For decades, the story of blood sugar management has been a simple one. A narrative of restriction and avoidance. The central character in this story has always been sugar itself, cast as the villain that must be defeated. This has led to a culture of dietary anxiety, where carbohydrates are feared and desserts are demonized. Countless individuals have dedicated immense effort to this dietary battle, tracking every iagram, celebrating every small victory against temptation, only to find that the war for metabolic health is far from won. The numbers may stabilize for a time, but they often begin a slow, inexorable creep upwards, particularly after the age of 50. This changes everything. The frustration is understandable, as it is based on an incomplete truth. The focus on what enters the body overlooks a far more critical question. What does the body do with that energy once it arrives? The human body is not a passive vessel. It is an incredibly sophisticated system designed to process and store fuel. When a meal is consumed, particularly one containing carbohydrates, it is broken down into its simplest form, glucose. This glucose enters the bloodstream, ready to be delivered to cells for immediate energy or stored for later use. This is a normal, healthy, and essential process. The problem does not begin here. The problem begins when the storage system fails. Imagine the bloodstream is a busy highway, and the glucose molecules are delivery trucks. The destination for most of these trucks, over 75% of them in fact, is a vast network of warehouses. These warehouses are the body's muscles. For a delivery to be successful, the warehouse gates must open. In the body, the signal to open these gates is a hormone called insulin. Insulin acts as the gatekeeper's key, traveling through the bloodstream after a meal, knocking on the door of muscle cells, and instructing them to open up and receive the glucose. This elegant system keeps blood sugar levels in a safe, narrow range. But what happens when the very place designed to store this energy, over 70% of it, simply stops listening? What happens when the gatekeeper falls asleep? This is the silent phenomenon that unfolds within millions of bodies, often for years before it is formally recognized. It is not that the pancreas has stopped producing insulin. In the early stages, it often produces even more insulin, shouting ever louder at the warehouse doors. The issue is that the doors are no longer responding to the knock. In scientific terms, this is known as insulin resistance. It's a state where the body's cells, particularly its muscle cells, become desensitized to insulin's signal. The gatekeeper has become hard of hearing. The consequences of this are profound. With the primary storage depots effectively offline, the glucose delivery trucks are left circling on the highway. This is what one sees as elevated blood sugar. This cellular deafness forces the body into a state of emergency. The pancreas works overtime, pumping out more and more insulin in a desperate attempt to be heard, leading to high levels of both glucose and insulin in the blood. A dangerous combination that promotes inflammation and weight gain, particularly around the abdomen. It's a vicious cycle. The higher the insulin, the more resistant the cells become over time. For years, the conventional medical approach has been to manage the symptoms of this traffic jam. Medications are prescribed to force more glucose into the cells, or to reduce the amount of glucose being produced by the liver. Dietary advice focuses on reducing the number of trucks on the road in the first place. These strategies can be necessary and life-saving, but they do not address the fundamental problem. The gatekeeper is still asleep. They do not reawaken the muscle's natural ability to hear the signal and perform its essential duty as the body's primary glucose reservoir. This is why progress can feel so slow, so frustrating, and so dependent on external management. The body is left in a state of confusing paradox. It is starving for energy at the cellular level, leading to fatigue and cravings, while simultaneously being flooded with excess energy in the bloodstream. This is why one might feel exhausted an hour after a meal that should have provided ample fuel. The cells are hungry, but the gates are locked. So if the key no longer works reliably, does that mean the lock is permanently broken? A groundbreaking body of research, some of it dating back to the 1980s, and largely ignored by mainstream health and fitness, suggests something far more astonishing. There is a master key, a way to open the gate without insulin at all. This discovery is a quiet revolution in our understanding of metabolism. It reveals a secondary pathway, a biological backdoor into the muscle cell that is controlled not by hormones, but by the physical action of the muscle itself. This is a mechanism known as non-insulin-mediated glucose uptake. When a muscle contracts, it initiates an internal signaling cascade. This cascade sends a message from deep within the muscle fiber directly to the surface of the cell. The message is simple and direct. We are working. We need fuel now. In response to this internal command, special glucose transporters, known as GLUT4, are moved from inside the cell to the cell membrane. They become new, functioning gates. This process is profoundly important because it is completely independent of insulin. It does not matter if the cell is resistant. It does not matter if the insulin key is not working well. The physical act of contraction provides a direct override, prying open a private entrance for glucose to enter. It is a powerful, built-in mechanism for metabolic control that every human body possesses. This is not about burning calories through intense exercise. It is not about running marathons or lifting heavy weights, which can be daunting or impossible for many. It is about a specific, biological conversation between movement and the cell. A whisper, not a shout. This understanding shifts the goal of movement away from weight loss or cardiovascular endurance and toward a much more subtle and immediate objective, sending the right signal to open the gates. This is a game changer for anyone over 50, as it offers a tool that is both gentle and immensely powerful. The question, then, is no longer if one can manage their blood sugar, but how to activate this dormant pathway most effectively. But here is the critical discovery that has been overlooked. Not all movement sends this signal with the same clarity. So what is this specific, gentle activation that can reawaken the gatekeeper in minutes? The modern fitness world often presents a false choice. On one end, there are high-intensity workouts, grueling sessions designed to push the body to its limits. On the other, there is the gentle advice to simply walk more. A recommendation so general, it often fails to produce significant metabolic results. Both approaches miss the crucial point of cellular signaling. High-intensity exercise certainly activates the non-insulin pathway, but it is unsustainable and carries a risk of injury for many in the 55 to 70 age demographic. Simple, casual walking, while beneficial for many reasons, is often not potent enough to trigger a substantial movement of GLUT4 transporters. The signal is too faint. This leaves many feeling stuck, believing that their only options are either too difficult or too ineffective. The actual solution, according to a growing body of physiological research, lies in a completely different type of muscular engagement. It is not about intensity or duration in the traditional sense. It is about activating the right muscles, in the right way, to send the clearest possible signal. The body's largest muscles, the postural muscles of the lower body, like the soleus and the calf, are uniquely designed for this. They are metabolic powerhouses, rich in mitochondria and built for sustained, low-level work. When they are engaged correctly, they act like giant sponges for blood glucose. Yet in our modern, sedentary lives, these specific muscles often remain dormant for hours on end, even if one considers themselves to be active. The specific signal is never sent. The research points towards a method of continuous, low-level activation, a way of waking up these sleeping giants, these sleeping giants so they can begin their work. But this raises a terrifying question. If this mechanism is so powerful, so fundamental to our health, why are these muscles asleep in the first place? Why does our body, in its infinite wisdom, allow its largest glucose sponges to lie dormant? The answer is both shockingly simple and deeply disturbing. It is not a bug in our biology. It is a feature of our world. We have, over the last century, meticulously engineered the perfect environment for metabolic dysfunction. We have built a cage for our muscles, and we willingly lock ourselves inside it every single day. The name of that cage? Comfort. Consider the chair you might be sitting in right now. It is designed to prevent muscular effort. Its lumbar support, its armrests, its cushioned seat. Every feature is engineered to allow your postural muscles to completely switch off, to go to sleep. This isn't just about being sedentary. It's a specific, targeted deactivation. The very act of sitting in a modern chair puts the soleus muscle into a state of complete slack. It receives no tension, no load, and therefore has no reason to contract. No reason to send the signal. No reason to open the gates. What if the chair is not a tool for rest, but an instrument of metabolic sabotage? But the chair is only the beginning. The plot against our metabolism runs deeper, right down to the ground we walk on. Let's talk about the shoe. For 50 years, we have been told a story that our feet are fragile, that our arches need support, and that we need maximum cushioning to protect our joints. And so, We entombed our feet in padded prisons. We believed we were protecting ourselves. But what if we were actually deafening ourselves to a vital conversation? Your foot has over 26 bones, 33 joints, and more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. It is a sensory and mechanical masterpiece, designed to feel the ground and make thousands of micro-adjustments with every single step. These constant, subtle contractions of the muscles in the feet and lower legs are a primary way our ancestors sent that gentle, continuous signal to open the glucose gates. It was a non-stop metabolic whisper, happening all day long. Modern, cushioned shoes effectively put a gag on the foot. They prevent this conversation. The shoe absorbs the impact. It provides the stability. And it tells the vast, powerful network of muscles in your lower body, you are not needed. You can go back to sleep. This is sensory deprivation for your metabolism. We have silenced the very signals our bodies are straining to hear. So now we exist in this modern paradox. We go to the gym for 1 hour to shout at our muscles with high-intensity exercise, and then we spend the other 23 hours in a state of enforced muscular silence. We are trying to fix a communication problem by screaming intermittently, when what the body actually needs is a constant, gentle dialogue. We have forgotten the language of our own biology. This isn't about blaming chairs or shoes. It is about recognizing that we are living in an alien environment, one that our metabolism is not evolved for. The challenge is not to abandon the modern world, but to learn how to speak our body's native language again, even from within the cage. So how do we do that? How do we reinitiate that conversation? The research I mentioned earlier, the studies that have been quietly accumulating for decades, have not just identified the problem, they have isolated the solution with incredible precision. They found the specific words that the soleus muscle understands, the exact type of contraction that sends the clearest, most powerful signal to open the GLUT4 gates. It's not a calf raise, which is a powerful, short-duration movement that primarily uses glycogen. That is a shout. The body needs a whisper. Researchers at the University of Houston discovered a specific movement they dubbed the soleus push-up. It sounds like an exercise, but it is not. It is more like flicking a biological switch. It can be done while sitting, it requires almost no perceptible effort, and it uses a different fuel system. While sitting with your feet flat on the floor, you simply raise your heel, while the front of the foot stays on the ground. The key is the range of motion and the method. It is not about forcing it. When done correctly, this simple motion can activate the soleus muscle in a way that allows it to double or even triple the local oxidative metabolism. That is a fancy way of saying it starts pulling a massive amount of glucose and fats from the blood to use as fuel for hours. It's not burning calories for weight loss. It is clearing the bloodstream. This one, subtle movement, performed while sitting at a desk or watching television, reestablishes the conversation. It tells the sleeping giant, wake up, it's time to eat. This is the master key in action, an override that bypasses the broken lock of insulin resistance and opens the private entrance. The implications of this are staggering. This isn't just a new exercise. It is a fundamental shift in how we approach metabolic management in our daily lives. But this raises a darker, more troubling question. If the science is this clear, and the solution this simple, why is this the first time you are hearing about it? Why isn't this master key common knowledge? Was it merely overlooked in the frantic search for a pharmaceutical cure? Or is there a more convenient and profitable reason our bodies were left to forget their own language? The truth is stranger. It wasn't forgotten. It was deliberately silenced. But why would our own biology betray us like this? The answer is not a conspiracy, but a tragedy of time. Our bodies are running an ancient survival program for a world that no longer exists. For 99% of human history, the most dangerous thing in the bloodstream wasn't too much glucose, it was too little. A drop in blood sugar, hypoglycemia, meant lethargy, confusion, weakness. In a world of predators and constant threats, it was a death sentence. So evolution, in its brutal wisdom, designed a panic button. It created a system where, under conditions of extreme inactivity, the kind that signaled famine or a brutal winter, the body would intentionally create insulin resistance. It wasn't a disease. It was a life-saving triage, a command to shut the gates on the muscles to divert the last precious bits of fuel to the brain. And the trigger for this shutdown? The complete absence of that low-level muscular whisper. The sensory deprivation we now inflict on ourselves for comfort was, to our ancestors, the unambiguous signal of impending starvation. Our chairs, our cars, our comfortable lives, They are not villains, they are simply echo chambers, amplifying a dangerous ancestral lie. A lie that tells our body there is famine in the land of plenty. We have inadvertently been whispering the password for starvation, and our faithful, ancient biology has simply obeyed, locking the doors to protect us from a threat that doesn't exist. But what if we could change the whisper? What if we could tell our bodies the truth? That the hunt was successful, that the winter has passed, that it is safe to feast again. This is the power we've been looking for. Not in a pill, not in a punishing workout, but in a simple, quiet movement. The Soleus push-up is not an exercise. It is an affirmation. It is the message. The famine is over. With every subtle lift of the heel, you are rewriting the code. You are breaking a spell cast by evolution itself. You are taking back the key and reminding your body of the language it was born to speak. A language of constant, low-level activity that signals safety, abundance, and metabolic freedom. This is not just about managing blood sugar. It is about reclaiming our biological birthright. This is the first key we are handing you. A key to unlock a door you didn't even know was closed. But there are other doors, other forgotten languages, other ancient programs running our modern lives in ways we fail to see. The human body is the most complex machine on Earth, and we were never given the instruction manual. Our mission is to write it together. To get the next key, and to continue this journey of rediscovery, subscribe to Better_Health. It's time to learn the language of